Mrs. Johnson walked into the floral shop with a somber expression on her face. She had just received news of a dear friend's passing, and she wanted to find the perfect flowers to honor their memory. As she made her way around the shop, she couldn't help but notice the soft music playing in the background. The gentle rhythm of the piano seemed to soothe her nerves and bring a sense of calm to the otherwise bustling shop. As she perused the selection of flowers, Mrs. Johnson found herself tapping her foot to the music's beat. She couldn't quite place the tune, but it was familiar and comforting. Finally, she found the perfect arrangement of white lilies and greenery. She approached the sales clerk, who took note of her choice and began to wrap the flowers in a delicate paper. As Mrs. Johnson reached for her wallet, she paused and asked, "What's the name of this song that's playing? It's quite lovely." The sales clerk smiled warmly and replied, "It's Clair de Lune by Debussy. It's one of our favorite pieces to play here in the shop. It has a peaceful rhythm that seems to help our customers find what they're looking for." Mrs. Johnson nodded, grateful for the information. She left the shop with her beautiful bouquet and a newfound appreciation for the power of music and rhythm to bring comfort in times of sorrow. Lily, the sales clerk, noticed Mrs. Johnson walking into the shop with a sad expression on her face. She approached her with a warm smile and asked how she could be of assistance. When Mrs. Johnson mentioned that she needed flowers for a funeral, Lily's heart went out to her. Lily knew that selecting the right flowers for a funeral could be an emotional experience. She gently guided Mrs. Johnson towards the white lilies, explaining how they symbolized purity and the restoration of the soul. She also suggested adding some greenery to represent the hope of eternal life. As Mrs. Johnson considered her options, Lily noticed her becoming overwhelmed with emotion. She offered her a tissue and a comforting word, assuring her that she understood how difficult it was to choose flowers for such an occasion. Lily took her time with Mrs. Johnson, answering any questions she had and offering her professional advice. She even helped her write a heartfelt note to attach to the bouquet, giving her suggestions for the wording. Through her kindness and compassion, Lily helped Mrs. Johnson find the perfect flowers to honor her friend's memory. As she left the shop, Mrs. Johnson thanked Lily for her empathy and understanding, remarking on how much it had meant to her during such a difficult time. As the funeral procession made its way down the aisle of the church, Mrs. Johnson held tightly onto the bouquet of white lilies and greenery that she had chosen with Lily's help. She couldn't help but feel grateful for the kindness and empathy that the sales clerk had shown her at the floral shop. As the service began, Mrs. Johnson laid the bouquet on the altar, and the scent of the flowers filled the air. The soft piano music that had played in the shop now filled the church, adding to the peaceful atmosphere. Throughout the service, Mrs. Johnson noticed the comfort that the flowers brought to her and the other mourners. The beauty and fragrance of the lilies reminded them all of the beauty of the life that they had lost, and the greenery served as a reminder of the hope of eternal life. After the service, as the mourners made their way outside, Mrs. Johnson was approached by the family of the deceased. They thanked her for the beautiful flowers that she had chosen, remarking on how much comfort they had brought to them during such a difficult time. The fragrance of the lilies lingered in the air as Mrs. Johnson made her way back to her car. She couldn't help but feel grateful for the power of flowers and their ability to bring comfort and peace during times of sorrow. And she couldn't help but think of Lily, the kind and compassionate sales clerk who had helped her choose the perfect bouquet to honor her friend's memory.